Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one's entitled Planet X and the movie Star Wars Reveal the Truth About Who We Are. Now, in Article 623 entitled Planet X and Atlantis to Now, What Happened, I show that Planet X reveals that Earth was once a part of a vast, technologically advanced galactic empire like what appears in the movie Star Wars, and that Atlantis was most likely the capital city on Earth, with most likely a spaceport which allowed it to stay connected to the rest of the empire. I also showed that it was ruled by Lucifer and destroyed by God due to his rebellion, and that he is now still ruling on earth and has the ability to impart his ideas and thoughts to the minds of men, which is why he can impart the idea of the Star Wars Empire to men, which then ends up as a movie. And here you see a Star Wars city. Planet X reveals that an empire, like the one conceptualized in this movie, actually did exist 6,000 years ago, and that all the planets in the empire were destroyed except for Earth. Now, the vast empire was ruled by Lucifer and destroyed by God due to Lucifer's rebellion, which is described in the Bible. For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. Who are these stars of God that he wanted to exalt himself above of? He wanted to exalt his throne or rulership over these stars. These could not have been physical stars, as he already ruled a vast empire and thus many physical star systems. So this is referring to other beings. The stars of God had to be spiritual beings created by God. Lucifer vowed to raise his throne above them and thus control these stars of God. God destroyed Lucifer's empire by removing his light from the stars and planets, making it up. This light is what gives matter mass, or the ability to interact gravitationally. Without the light, the debris pieces remain suspended in the Earth's atmosphere until they have absorbed enough energy to reach the surface. Once they were destroyed, these objects were attracted to the solar system, as this was the only system around that still had gravitational energy in its particles. They started coming into the solar system as what is called comets, and caused the Great Flood, and also caused the rest of the planets in the solar system to be destroyed. And this illustrates what actually occurred when these objects were destroyed, and the Planet X planets became a core, a dead core. It was a living core with outer layers, or compressed outer layers. And it became this, a dead core surrounded by the outer layers, which turned into debris pieces. And this happened when the Creator removed this gravitational energy or light, because gravitational energy is photons that exist within particles. And the suddenness of the event is apparent in the surface pieces coming into the Earth's atmosphere that still have buildings on them. And these buildings are in very good order. They definitely not ruins. And you may look at Article 584 entitled Planet X, the reason behind GMO crops. And here you see a globular cluster, and you can see that the star density increases towards the center where the gravitational energy is higher. And a globular cluster starts out as a glob of plasma that's ejected by a galactic core. And then once outside the body of the core, it starts creating more matter, so its gravitational energy drops. And as its gravitational energy drops, it fissions and breaks up into pieces. This is what occurred here with one of these Planet X planets, one of the planets that belong to Lucifer's vast empire. So God destroyed all these planets in Lucifer's empire, but not Earth. Why? It is obvious that all these planets had physical beings on them that looked like us and lived in the same type of buildings that we do. Why would God make a distinction between those planets and our planet? It could only be that the beings on Earth had something different about them. They had spirits. They were spirit beings inside those bodies, us. We know that because we know we are spirit beings. God is a spirit being and he creates spirit beings. So we were created by God. We are his children. And Lucifer wanted to raise his throne above God's children, the stars of God. What did he do to raise his throne above God's other created spiritual beings? He trapped them in physical bodies which he created in order to extract his spiritual energy. Lucifer is not a creator, but he is a master at using what has already been created to create other things out of them. But we have been told that God created us in physical bodies or flesh bodies. How is that possible? If God created our physical bodies with spirits in them, why did he not create all the other physical beings with spirits in them as well? And here you see one of the cities that are coming in on debris pieces into the Earth's atmosphere. And here we only have ocean. So these are actually buildings that are built on a piece of rock which broke. It's part of one of these planets that broke into pieces. So one of the pieces with buildings on them has come into the Earth's atmosphere. And this is on the ocean. So this could not have been just floating on the water, and there's usually nothing there. So this is definitely one of the cities that just floats in the sky, and they're always surrounded by cloud because the cloud is part of the debris. It's the water that existed on the planet that turned into cloud. And here you see another one of these cities floating in the sky. You can see that they're all buildings, and there's greenery. So some of the seeds on this piece of rock germinated and once inside the Earth's atmosphere, and there was even time for that greenery to grow. So they must remain suspended in the Earth's atmosphere for a very long time. And here you see one of the city from the movie Star Wars, and here you see Dubai, and most likely the new Atlantis, since it seems to have a lot of these very Star Wars-like buildings in them. So all it needs now is a good spaceport, except that there may now be any planets to go since they've all been destroyed. But it is looking a lot like this city here. Now, the universe is the same everywhere. The universe works the same way at all levels. All particles are created with light inside them. Matter creates matter out of light and with light inside it. God does not create some matter with light inside it and some matter without light inside it. The laws governing the universe are not one way at the microscopic level and another way at the astronomical level, as I have shown in the many articles and books I have written. So God does the same thing all over the universe and at all levels. So it is illogical to suppose that God created some physical beings with spirits in them and not others. But if we were all the same, why were their planets destroyed suddenly and not ours? So we have to be different from them, and that means that only the physical beings on earth had spirits in them. And this can only mean that God was not the creator of those beings on the destroyed planets and could not have been the one who created the physical body we inhabit or that Adam and Eve inhabited. Adam and Eve were created by God, but as spiritual beings, as stars of God. And they were persuaded to then inhabit a human body and became trapped in them, because that was Lucifer's intention, to trap them so he could draw and use their spiritual energy. This is how he raised his throne above the stars of God, us. Thus, God's children were somehow prompted into entering those physical bodies on earth only, which is why the earth was not destroyed. God then destroyed the other planets so that what occurred on earth could not be repeated on any other planet. The Bible says that Eve was deceived to eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And Lucifer said that they would become like God, knowing good and evil. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. So she thought she was doing the right thing. She was going to exercise a self-control and be able to learn what is right and what is wrong through experiencing life inside a physical body, just like God knew what was right and what was wrong. but she was unable to control the body's desires, and she failed and felt guilty and could not look at God, the creator of the universe, in the face again. Sin had now separated her from God. Lucifer must have laughed, because that was his aim, to trap them so he could be like God, so that he could control them and steal them from God. He wanted to be like God. He wanted to recreate himself, create a spiritual race to obey and worship him just like God had. And to do that, he needed spiritual energy. Where would he get that spiritual energy? From fellow spiritual beings that had been created by God. He trapped them in physical bodies so he could draw the energy and use it. And these are the Planet X system stellar cores, and these are in the sun's corona. There are some that, the smaller ones, that come into the Earth's atmosphere, just like they go into the sun's atmosphere. And some of them are extremely large, like this one, 7 times the size of the sun. So this would have been the core of a star that would have been 14 times larger than the sun. So some of these star systems must have been really, really large star systems. And there are many, many of them, many of just stars. So if there are thousands of these objects that come to the sun, and only the large ones that would have been stars come to the sun, and all these stars most likely had several planets orbiting them, how many thousands of planets were really in this empire? And you may look at Article 620 entitled Huge Gas Giant Planets in the Inner Solar System, where I show what actually happens to these objects. Once they have absorbed energy from the sun, they turn into gas giants. So at least they turn into what on our planet is called a gas giant. So he stole what was God's by convincing his victims, who were stars of God or spiritual beings or angels, to go into the physical bodies that he specifically bred and genetically manipulated to be intelligent but have overwhelming desires for certain things. How is that possible? Well, the planets had animal life on them. He manipulated the animal's genetic material until he got what he wanted. Personality and intelligence are inbuilt in the physical genetic code of these animals. He learned to manipulate the genetic code. A physical body has a mind which is capable of thought. When a spiritual being inhabits a physical body, there are now 2 minds inside that body and 1 spirit. Lucifer's excuse for creating these intelligent physical beings was most likely that he needed physical laborers to build his kingdom. The same excuse that he now uses to introduce AI and robots. His lying ways have not changed, but his aim was to get Adam, who was most likely the leader of his race, to come into a physical body, as that would pull the rest of his race into it, 1/3 of the angels in heaven. And his tail drew the 1/3 part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. The stars of heaven have to be the spirit beings that God had created, and thus the same as the stars of God. These cannot have been real stars, as real stars cannot fall to the earth. And it would be impossible for 1/3 of the stars we see in the sky to even get to earth. So the dragon, the reptilian king, Lucifer, drew and cast 1/3 of God's angels, God's stars, to the earth. And that is why God did not destroy the earth at the same time that he destroyed the other planets in Lucifer's kingdom. His children were on earth inside those physical bodies. Robots or AI are needed to do a job, or are they meant to replace the current workers, us? Because his race is almost complete and he no longer needs us for spiritual energy, and is thus planning to do away with us. But some will still argue that God created us in flesh and blood bodies because that is what it says in the scriptures. But does it really? Why does it say in Matthew 22 verse 30, "For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven"? So in the resurrection, after all this is done, the rescue plan for those of God's children who choose to accept it, in other words, Jesus coming in the flesh and dying in the flesh, and thus paying the price for the sin, which we cannot stop ourselves from doing because of the bodies we are in, we will be like angels. Why would God create us in physical bodies if He only wants us to be like angels, and we end up like angels at the end? God is not double-minded. God does not create one thing when He actually wanted another. Why would God place us in bodies that would separate us from Him? That is illogical. God is not illogical. God created us, the spirit being inside these bodies, but He did not create the body. Lucifer did. And why is this truth so attacked? Because Lucifer knows how to talk to the minds of men and get them to do things. We know this from the fact that no human being now on earth could have known about the Galactic Empire he once had, but yet the movie Star Wars was made. The attack on this truth comes through human beings, but the attack is really from him. He has hidden the truth about Planet X because this is where it leads. It leads to this question: why did God destroy all those planets with all those beings looking just like us on them and not us? And from there, the lies of the father of lies unravel. In conclusion, God cannot have been the creator of the human body, but only of the spirit beings, the stars of God, whom Lucifer convinced to inhabit the bodies which he created, so he could exalt his throne above those stars of God. In other words, so that he could use their spiritual energy to become like God, to recreate himself just as God had done in the stars of God. That was his rebellion, and God destroyed his empire so that he could not do the same thing anywhere else. And these are the references. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.